Okay, let's dive in. We're exploring something really fundamental today. How the internet actually addresses everything, routes all that traffic, browsing, streaming, all of it.
For years, IPv4 was the standard,
Yeah,
but the internet just kept growing and growing, and, well, we hit a ceiling.
exactly. So the next step was IPv6, a pretty major overhaul, really.
And to get the real story, the blueprint for that shift, we're going straight to the source. RFC 2460.
RSE 2460.
Yeah, the original specification for IPv6, published way back December 1998. It's basically the instruction manual for the internet's future written over 2 decades ago.
Wow, 1998. Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to crack open this landmark request for comments, RFC, that's what it stands for, request for comments, the docs that define internet standards,
Right.
and pull out the core changes, the key ideas, maybe some surprises hidden in this paper that really defined IPv6.
Absolutely. And the biggest, most obvious reason for IPv6.
Sure.
It jumps right out at you from RFC 2460. The addresses.
Address space.
IPv4 gave us 32-bit addresses. RFC 2460 defines a jump to 128 bits.
Okay, 128 bits sounds much bigger, obviously, but what does that really translate to?
It means going from, what, about 4.3 billion addresses with IPv4 to a number that's just astronomical.
Yeah.
Something like 3.4 times 10 to the 38th power.
Whoa.
Yeah. It completely solved the address exhaustion problem. It meant, basically every grain of sand could have an IP address, theoretically. But it wasn't just more addresses.
Right.
This huge space allowed for design changes, like
Yeah.
making auto-configuration much simpler for devices joining a network, and new types of addresses, like Anycast.
Anycast.
Yeah, where one address doesn't point to just one machine, but like the nearest machine in a group that offers a specific service. Very useful.
Okay, so a virtually bottomless pit of addresses. That's change number one.
Mhm.
What else did RFC 2460 do to streamline things?
Well, look at the header itself. The basic IPv6 header is actually simpler than IPv4's.
Simpler. How so?
Some fields that weren't absolutely essential for every single router hop, or things that could vary in size, they were either dropped or moved out into optional headers.
Ah, good.
The main goal was speed, faster processing for routers, making that core job of just forwarding packets more efficient.
But the internet needs options, right? Special handling, quality of service, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How did they handle that if they simplified the main header?
That's where one of the really elegant design choices comes in. Extension headers.
Extension headers.
Instead of cluttering the main header, RFC 2460 created this system. You have the fixed size base header, and then if needed, you chain these optional extension headers after it.
Like adding module.
Exactly. It gives you loads of flexibility. You can add new features later on without breaking the fundamental header processing.
So how does that work in practice? Do the routers along the path have to read all these extra headers?
Generally, no. Most extension headers think routing header, fragment header. They're really intended only for the final destination of the packet.
So the routers in the middle just look at the main header.
Mostly, yes.
Yeah.
They just need the destination address from the base header to do their job. But there's a critical exception, called out specifically in RFC 2460. It's the hop-by-hop options header. If that header is present right after the main IPv6 header, then every single node, routers included, must examine and process it.
Every single one.
Every single one. Source, routers, destination. It's the only one designed for that hop-by-hop processing.
Interesting. Okay, so most are destination-focused, but hop-by-hop is special. You mentioned fragmentation earlier. That changed quite a bit too, didn't it?
Oh yeah, fundamentally. This is a really big difference from IPv4 laid out right there in RFC 2460. In IPv6, fragmentation is only done by the source node.
Only the sender, not the routers.
Correct. Routers in the middle are forbidden from fragmenting IPv6 packets. If a packet is too big for the next link, the path MTU, maximum transmission unit, the router doesn't break it up.
What does it do then?
It drops the packet, throws it away, and it sends an ICMP error message, a packet too big message, back to the original sender.
Whoa, so the burden shifts entirely to the source. It has to figure out the path size and send smaller chunks if needed?
Exactly that. It pushes the complexity to the endpoints, simplifies the routers, but means the sending host needs to be smarter, often using something called path MTU discovery to figure out the right size before sending. It's a core design philosophy change.
Fascinating. Okay, what about some of those specific fields in the header? Like, I remember flow label and traffic class being mentioned. They seemed almost ahead of their time in '98.
They kind of were. The RFC itself describes them carefully. The 20-bit flow label was intended for sequences of packets needing special handling, like, say, a real-time voice call, keep them flowing together.
And traffic class.
That 8-bit field was for classifying packets, maybe for priority or different service levels. But RFC 2460 explicitly stated these fields were, quote, experimental or subject to change, meaning the exact mechanisms for quality service or QoS and differentiated services were still being hammered out back then. But they built the hooks into the header anyway.
So RFC 2460 was laying the groundwork even before the applications were fully defined.
Precisely. It was quite forward-looking, anticipating the need to manage traffic flows and priorities, which became super important later.
Right. And moving up the protocol stack, how did IPv6 affect things like TCP and UDP, their checksums, for instance?
Good point. RFC 2460 specifies that too. Transport protocols like TCP and UDP, they calculate checksums for data integrity, right?
Yeah.
Those checksums include something called a pseudo-header, which has key info from the IP layer, like source and destination addresses. With IPv6's 128-bit addresses, that pseudo-header had to change to include the full, longer addresses.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Yes, a really key detail for UDP. In IPv4, the UDP checksum was optional. You could send UDP packets with a zero checksum. Over IPv6, RFC 2460 made the UDP checksum mandatory. A UDP packet with a zero checksum is considered invalid and must be dropped.
Why make it mandatory? Any idea?
Probably tied to the sheer scale. With that vast address space and potentially more complex paths across the global internet, ensuring end-to-end data integrity for UDP, even though it's connectionless, became more critical. Less room for error, perhaps.
Okay. And one last detail, the time to live, or TTL field from IPv4.
Renamed. In IPv6, it's called the hop limit. And RFC 2460 clarifies its job. Nodes just decrement it by 1 at each hop. If it hits 0, discard the packet.
So it's purely a hop counter.
Pretty much. The RFC states nodes aren't required to try and relate it to actual time in seconds anymore. If you need time-based packet expiration, that's up to the higher layers, not the IP layer itself.
Got it. So looking back at RFC 2460, it really was a complete rethinking. Massive address space, cleaner header, those flexible extension headers.
The crucial hop-by-hop exception, the big shift to source-only fragmentation, mandatory UDP checksums, and those early seeds for flow labels and traffic class.
Yeah, it covered a lot. And thinking about that last point, how RFC 2460 put flow label and traffic class in there back in 1998, calling them experimental but defining what they could be used for.
It really showed foresight.
It did. They were designing for an internet needing QoS and traffic management way before those things became commonplace. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Looking at today's internet standards, what little experimental fields or concepts are being defined now that might fundamentally change things 20 years from today? What's the next flow label hiding in plain sight?